Pants falling from the sky, an RV speeding through the desert, a middle-aged man wearing only a gas mask and tidy whities. These absurd images greet us in the first moments of Breaking Bad. But who is this? And why are there dead bodies sloshing around in the back? These pants are a solid image, and of course they come back in one of the final episodes when Walt is pushing a barrel of cash through the desert. The desert itself is a very important image. Shots of sand and rock formations are what we see in the first scenes and throughout again and again. The desert establishes one of the most prevalent uses of color in the show, yellow. Yellow is not a happy color in the Breaking Bad universe. Although yellow is often portrayed in other media as bright and luminous, accompanying pleasant rays of sunshine, the portrayal of yellow in Breaking Bad is the opposite. It's decay, mold, dust, and sand. Establishing this color symbolism from the very first shots of the show helps give audiences a thematic foundation, much like how an overture at the beginning of an opera establishes sonic motifs that appear later. The audience is thrown into a world of drama, suspense, comedy, and action. We've been reeled in by the hook that leaves us desperate for answers. We're introduced to our protagonist, Walter White, through shaky, self-recorded footage. We learn about his family and see how characters are related to one another, even if they are just names being called to our attention. The theme of familial importance is established early on. It appears to be what the protagonist Walt values the most at this point in time. He delivers a cryptic message to his loved ones. And now it is time to face the music. Or, so we are made to think, thanks to the setup. Breaking Bad masterfully employs flashbacks and flash-forwards to keep the narrative moving and reveal crucial details. This technique of disrupting continuity transports the audience while adding depth and intrigue to the story, and it's important to keep in mind as this plot device keeps popping up throughout the entire show. Foreshadowing is also used to hint at future events and character developments. It's a technique that creates anticipation and dramatic tension. Walt is an overqualified chemistry professor who's constantly disrespected by his bored students who don't really listen to his lectures. We learn he's unappreciated and not taken seriously as an authority figure. Chemistry is, well, technically, it is the study of matter, but I prefer to see it as the study of change, he states. Walt's lectures on chemistry serve as foreshadowing for his own transformation. As he teaches his class about the constant cycle of changing compounds, he unwittingly applies these principles to his own life. As the story unfolds, Walt undergoes significant changes and adaptations, mirroring the very principles he teaches. Foreshadowing sparks curiosity, hints at future plot developments, and lays the groundwork for themes. Something that makes this show stand out is that Walt isn't a static character throughout the show, not even within a single episode. Walter White exhibits moments of short temper, and as the series progresses, we see him becoming increasingly frustrated, especially when his authority is challenged. In the first lecture scene, Walt's energy is drained by a student named Chad. He shifts from being passionate about teaching to becoming annoyed and short. Walt works 2 jobs and isn't thrilled. At the car wash where he works as a cashier, he's frequently told to fill in for short staff and get out there on his hands and knees to clean. Walt's boss belittles him and expects him to deal with it and do what he's told when he's told. Chad pulls up and makes fun of Walt as he cleans his car tires. It's humiliating, and leaves him feeling powerless in his own life. Even among his family, Walt faces belittlement. Skylar, his wife, arranges a surprise party for him, but his brother-in-law, Hank Schrader, steals the spotlight. During Hank's speech to Walt, he delivers a backhanded compliment before shifting the conversation to his own achievements. Walt observes as his family and friends pay more attention to Hank's drug bust than to him. It's obvious that Hank is the beloved uncle figure to Walter Jr., who admires him, while Walt himself doesn't hold the same level of fascination for his son. During the conversation between Walt and Hank about guns, Walt was emasculated and portrayed as weak. In this episode, like many others, Walt and his wife Skylar's relationship appears to prioritize practicalities and responsibilities, rather than focusing on love and emotional connection. This may lead Walt to feel a sense of distance from his wife, and, as the family provider, Walt knows that his son and pregnant wife depend on him. This puts immense pressure on him to be a good husband and father. It's as if his whole life centers around them and his 2 jobs. Walt's trapped in a life where he does the same thing every single day. This is evident from the very first scene, when his family keeps saying, again, Using this word helps to highlight the repetitive nature of their daily routine and conveys a sense of irritation among them. But Walt's tedious life takes a sharp turn when he collapses at work in the car wash and finds out he has lung cancer with approximately 2 years to live, even with chemotherapy. Walt hides his health information from his wife. He does this to uphold the facade of stability and so that he has time to figure it all out for himself. Walt doesn't want to worry anyone or ask for help. He finds his health trivial and not worth the cost of a trip to the hospital. He puts his family first and doesn't consider the negative consequences his lung cancer will have on his own life. From this point on, he has to face his mortality and realizes he wants change. He wants excitement. This scene adds humor and comedic relief to balance a serious scene. Our protagonist has seen his entire life flash before his eyes at this point, and he can't stand it. Walt decides to take up Hank on his previous offer and goes on a ride-along to see him bust a meth lab. One thing leads to another, and Walt sees his old student Jesse Pinkman fall out of the house and speed off in his car. It is clear that Jesse is who the DEA is looking for. Walt decides to track down Jesse Pinkman, his old student, and makes him an ultimatum. Next thing you know, Jesse and Walt are purchasing an RV so they can have a mobile meth lab. "I am awake," Walt states, and leaves Jesse confused. We get to see Walt's character change when he's at the clothing store with his family and some teenage boys are making fun of his son. Walt uses violence to stop them by stepping on the main boy's leg, asking how it feels to not be able to walk. This moment is kind of like an eye for an eye. There's a gleam in Walt's eyes after he does it and gets his first taste of violence and power. One of the socially acceptable ways that aggression can be expressed is in the case of defense, of oneself or a loved one. The fact that Walt uses this newly regained aggression and sadism to defend his disabled son is one of the ways that the storytellers get the audience to root for Walt. We're on his side, a dynamic that comes back to bite audience members as they witness Walt perform increasingly questionable and downright egregious acts as the show continues. Part of the seed that's being planted here by the storytellers is, how far are you willing to follow this man? How far before you draw the line and say, this man is evil? So this right here is kind of when two separate egos start coming together as one. It shows the audience, maybe there's a little bit of Heisenberg in Walt and a little bit of Walt in Heisenberg. The Heisenberg persona is sometimes described colloquially by audience members as Walter White's alter ego. But a better Jungian way to describe it would be as Walter White's shadow. For Jungian psychologists, the shadow self is made up of the impulses and characteristics that get repressed or pacified by the ego. According to Jung, people who are psychologically healthy are those who have successfully integrated their shadow traits into their personality. In the case of Walter White, his shadow includes his arrogance, aggressiveness, and sadistic impulses. These things have been repressed and pacified in Walter for a long time. Beneath these, Walter also knows that he can do better than his current situation. He once founded a company that produced groundbreaking research, and now he's a high school teacher scrubbing tires to make a few extra bucks. The dissonance between what Walt is capable of and the reality of his circumstances fuels the capacity for shadow-induced outbursts, the power of which are unleashed by his death sentence diagnosis. This is a theme found in many narratives throughout the 1990s and 2000s. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. This is the concept that makes the Joker such an attractive character in whatever story he appears. In Walter's case, this kind of dark freedom is gained from his diagnosis. Although he says that he does what he does because of his family's future, the deeper psychological truth is that Walt does what he does because he's finally free to do it. No more fear, no more hesitation, no more half measures. In the wake of his diagnosis, there's nothing left to keep Walter White from breaking bad. Thanks for watching. Comment down below, and if you want to see more content from me, please subscribe and give this video a like. Of course, I can't take all the credit for this video because I had a special assistant to help me, and that is Existence Etc. I've linked the channel below. If you would like to see more collabs, please let me know and I'll be sure to bring in multiple perspectives.